You got your mama's sunshine, you got your daddy's rain. You're like a piece of heaven in a hurricane. And it's bubbling.
That's actually the best intro we've had.
Okay, welcome to this week's podcast. It is the week of the big game, and can't say it. Can't say the word.
Really? Are you sure?
Schmooper.
I feel like that.
Schmooperspol.
I feel like that's
what you can say.
An urban legend.
No, I don't know. Yeah, I'm not sure. But anyway, we're glad that you guys are with us this week. We're going to talk about that game just because it's what you talk about this week. It's interesting to me that if you look at those pictures of those guys with the little leather helmets on back in the day, they just got into a field and somebody decided to make up this game, and they were just a bunch of probably outcasts, right? like who are these guys? Everyone else is working. Everyone else is building the country right now, and these guys are in the field right now with leather helmets on, playing a
Wasting
game.
their time. Their dads were mad at them.
Their time. They were probably outcasts, right?
Yeah.
Josh, I can remember, I don't know how many times, when we were younger, we played football in the street, the only place we had to play.
Yeah.
And I remember sitting over in front of our house on the curb so many times with blood running down my legs because you'd hit some sand and you'd fall. And I mean, that's the only place we had to play. But going back to Super Bowl, you know who's favored today?
Did it?
Chiefs.
The Chiefs. I would say the Chiefs.
Well, I let me rephrase that. Last week, I haven't looked currently, but the last time I checked a few days ago, 49ers by 2 points or 3 or something.
Yeah, I don't know.
Who are you rooting for? Who are you rooting for?
Probably the Niners. I mean, California, growing up.
What about
Joe
you, Tom?
Montana.
I like to go against the grain, and I'm so sorry for everybody out there. My wife loves Taylor Swift. My daughter loves Taylor Swift. I don't want to be associated with the 49ers.
Oh, okay. So you're not a Swiftie. I thought you were about to say you were a Swiftie.
No, did you hear on Newsfeed last week? Newsfeed last week, they had an article that Taylor Swift and Biden are the same person. That's why you've never seen them together.
Biden?
There's also a newsfeed that Taylor Swift might sway the president's election. What do you think of that?
She helped the economy.
No.
I'm just saying.
No.
You actually don't think she has enough power to help sway the election?
I do not. No.
Wow.
I think that people...
You don't, or you don't want to believe it?
No, I think that if you're influenced by celebrity at that level, by politics, you're 20 years old. You know what I mean? And,
but
and
they're
there
voting.
are some 20-year-olds.
Yeah, they're able to vote.
But the number is pretty low compared to, when you look at the numbers, people don't really start voting until they're 25 on. I mean, really. Some do.
I think that's changing, though. I really do.
Oh, well, college campuses, there's a lot of, campaigning.
Well, then again, this political election coming up, somebody very close to me told me the other day, there's 2 of them, and they got 5 ballots sent to their house to vote.
Interesting.
With their same names on it?
I don't know. They said 5 ballots.
That's
I don't know. This
interesting.
whole thing's... But we got to start praying over the election now. This election is so important. But let's go back to sports again. Let's just keep the sports here. What is your favorite sport? If you were asked what your favorite sport was, what would you say?
Oh, wow.
You know mine.
Oh, I know yours is basketball.
Yeah. It's not
Yours
even
basketball.
Yeah.
I would probably say it's football. I don't watch it a lot. I have once I grabbed onto a team early on in my life. I was a Green Bay Packer fan. As I got older, people started quizzing me on statistics and players and all that stuff. Totally robbed all the fun for me because I like to watch the game, support it, watch. But now I pulled back on it. I don't really associate myself with sports. And
that's a weird statement to make, by the way.
I don't. Just because when you become an adult, so many people want details. Oh, what about this? And then I've been caught in conversations. Pastor Tom Touchstone's a Green Bay Packer fan. He found out I was a Green Bay Packer fan, just starts talking to me about details. And he might as well have been speaking in a different language. I had no idea what he was talking about, so that's when I resigned.
You're like, I can't keep up with it.
I can't keep up. I got a life.
Not to go back to this, I will tell you my favorite sport in a second. But
Are you going to bring up Taylor Swift?
No, but I'm going to bring up the young voters. 23% of voters under 25 vote.
Okay.
23%. So
I think
that's low.
Off on your Swifties. Like how many of them are like in their 30s now? Because
Well,
Taylor Swift has been around for a long time.
That's true. You used to be a huge fan. You brought us to the first.
I brought you to a
Taylor
concert
Swift that we ever went to.
Interesting.
Does that annoy you guys that the cameras keep going up to the press box?
I think it annoys the
It doesn't bother me. It
announcers.
doesn't bother me at all. Who's it annoying? I mean, whatever. Show her. I kind of like to see when Kelsey does something. I kind of like to see. I wonder what Taylor Swift's doing.
I like to see
Really,
his
Pastor?
brother.
I do. I kind of enjoy seeing the shots.
Really?
Yeah.
I like to see Kelsey's brother with his shirt off.
Yeah, that was actually
Streaming
fun.
with his beard.
In what degrees of weather? I wonder.
Oh, it was
what-
freezing.
Freezing.
And then he jumped out of the booth. He jumped out of the booth and started taking pictures of people.
No, he jumped out of the booth. The more impressive thing is he jumped back into the booth. I was like, dude, that guy's a beast.
Yeah, he is a beast.
You guys got to be so frightening in professional football to have a 300-pound guy that can run a 40
That
and
is so
whatever
fast.
coming
Yeah.
after you.
Yeah, the hits that you see now
Unbelievable.
is insane.
At least they start protecting the quarterbacks now. So
Yeah.
anyway, there's a lot of women listen to our podcast. They don't want to hear about football.
Oh, they're
or
into it.
sports.
And that's not true, man. A lot of my
that's true.
Instagram feed and it's like just they're really into it. It just
They
surprises me.
did find out that subtly Pastor Ron might be a Swiftie. Just subtly.
He likes watching.
He does like to see her
I
reaction.
do think that Taylor Swift might actually influence the amount of people that watch the Super Bowl.
Or the outcome of it, because I do
See,
think it's rigged now.
And now, so
You
I
think
go,
the Super Bowl's rigged?
No,
I think,
let
I
me go
think
back
the
one
Chiefs
game.
going.
Yeah.
The Chiefs
I
going
agree with
because
you, Tom.
of Taylor.
I agree with you. I think there was more, and people are gonna. This is an unpopular opinion, and it's just an opinion. But I agree with you, Tom. I
Is
think
it the
that
logo theory?
no, I think the whole thing was I was like, listen, if the Chiefs win, it's like because they make way more money
Right.
if the Chiefs
They
go to the
do.
Super Bowl because now all of a sudden you have all the Taylor Swift fans watching the
Yeah,
Super Bowl.
they can't rig that. They can't rig it.
I don't know. There was one
Hey.
play I watched online.
No, they can't rig
I
it.
watched one play.
There it was right there. I
There
watched
was. I watched
online.
it,
No.
and
I
everybody's
saw one
bringing it
video.
up. The guy is supposed to tackle Mahomes, okay?
Uh-huh.
And he literally looks at him and tackles another guy.
Really?
And it was just like, oh, he missed his script. Everyone's saying it's all scripted. Now, obviously, I don't think sports are scripted. I
Conspiracy
know,
theory. Conspiracy theory.
Yeah.
Hey, you know what? If that ever leaked out that any games were rigged, NFL would be gone.
Oh,
It'd be
man.
gone.
Yeah.
Would they?
I don't know. I know.
I know.
Maybe.
Is reality TV gone?
Just like professional wrestling, right?
Yeah. Maybe
Right, yeah.
everyone would be like, what are the writers going to come up with this year?
Yeah.
I always
be
wonder, is there
great.
anybody? I look at the audience of professional wrestling, and bless their hearts, some of them look kind of different. Does any of them actually believe that's real?
Oh,
Is there
WWF?
anybody in that
Oh.
audience that thinks it's real?
Are you talking about WWF?
Yeah.
Yeah, WWE. People do 100%. We knew a kid in high school. We accidentally
Yeah.
broke the news to him that wrestling was fake.
oh no.
No, his like whole family was in on it, and we were at a thing one day. We're like, oh yeah, it's
No,
like
don't tell them.
Yeah, don't.
That's what they said.
Yeah, don't tell. And we were talking out loud, and we said it, and they're like,
They're all, no,
he
no,
thought
no.
it was real. They're like, no. Like,
It was like, but it was like
That's
a long running joke to them, the family.
They were keeping
They're
it from
no,
them.
no, this is great.
But you
See if
look
we can
at
get to 21.
look at the audience. Sometimes they're getting worked up, man.
Yeah,
they're
they are.
mad. They're angry, and I'm
Yeah, they
going,
are.
Well,
gang, this is just it's
there
fake.
is there, and I just watched this movie, this latest movie, The Iron Claw. A really good movie about
Okay.
wrestling, and these guys that grew up, these Texas boys that grew up, and they were professional wrestlers. And there is a physicality and an art to it,
Right.
And
Yeah.
there is a performance factor.
Oh, they're
the more,
athletic.
well, the better they perform, the higher they do get ranked, and the more attention they get, and they'll get. It's like real fighting in that way,
Right.
But it is scripted. But at the same time, there is a physicality to it and an art to it.
Right.
So
They have to practice. It's like
yeah.
to know when to jump and how to react to
It's
it.
just
It's pretty
yeah.
phenomenal.
It's just like the NFL.
no. Next thing you're going to be telling me is that UFC is rigged.
Oh, that I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, that would be easier.
I don't
to
know. Vince
rig,
saw a
right?
video one time.
Yeah, I saw one play. I said, too.
I don't.
By the
think-
way, one play.
I don't think Khabib and McGregor was rigged. I think that they just those two guys hated each other.
The press conferences are rigged though for UFC, right?
Well,
I
again, it's
mean-
performance based, right?
Right,
The
yeah.
more you act up, the more you
Viewership.
Draw an audience.
McGregor he was the most famous fighter because he was a showman, and people loved it.
And he brought the UFC money.
I don't think he was that guy all the time.
No,
I think
not a
that,
chance.
you know,
It's a character that they have to play.
I want to
Right.
predict that this will be the most watched Super Bowl of all time.
probably. Yeah.
Just based on the California numbers, like you said, you're like, I want to go for the 49ers just because we're in California. And it's like, I have friends that are 49ers fans. So just think of the California base, all the people. And then you add on the whole Taylor Swift thing. I'm like, most viewership.
I like
time.
both teams. I really do. I think Patrick Mahomes is a great guy. And it is my opinion that he very well could come down to he could, come on,
Be
Ron,
one of the
stop.
greatest.
One of the greatest quarterbacks that's ever played the game.
Yeah.
Patrick Mahomes. And they're all nice guys. Patrick Mahomes said something about God. Did you see an interview?
I didn't,
said,
but
and then,
surprised.
of course, Purdy, he's very vocal about his walk with God.
Yeah.
And
McCaffrey.
Christian McCaffrey, I've watched him. He's praying for the game, kneeling down. And so to me, these two teams, I was really hoping, and I won't say the name of the team, but I was hoping another team would be in there so I'd have somebody to root against. But you know what? Both these teams are pretty class acts.
You
They
can
really
root against. You can root against Usher,
Yeah.
who's doing the
Is he
Super
the
Bowl.
halftime?
He's doing the
He's the
halftime
halftime.
show. You can,
But I will say,
You don't like that one, Tom?
Go 49ers. Go 49ers.
There you go.
49ers. Pastor, what's your favorite sport?
You know what? I think college football is
wow.
probably my favorite. And after that, it would be a toss-up between NFL, baseball, and UFC. I love all three of them.
Wow.
So
Who's your favorite kid? I'm just kidding.
I never said my favorite sport. I want to know that too. Well, who is it? My favorite sport is baseball. Definitely. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I love
I would have thought you would have been all out baseball.
I love the
That's what I thought,
Dodgers.
too.
And,
I played baseball and I like baseball, but I think college football. I mean, I love the spirit, the enthusiasm. Although they're ruining the game right now with this portal and all this stuff. But anyway, hey, I want to talk about things we complain about and how we can refocus that area of our life. God hates complaining, and I do too much of it. And so I have to. Debbie and I both have been really working on stopping our complaining. Let me start out. I'll give you 2 or 3 things that I complain about very often, or let me rephrase that. I used to complain about very often. I'm trying to reform. But one is the weather and the air quality in this valley where we live. And, you know, instead of complaining, I'm trying to look at the good things that we can do to offset it. For example, work out inside. That's what we have to do on some days. When our air quality is real bad, it's better to stay inside on those days. It's not always real bad, but it is a lot of the time. And when you work out inside, you see people. You know, I run into people in the gym. I get my workout in, plus I get some fellowship in, and I get to see some people. When we do go outdoors, I mean, we can always drive 35 miles up the road in Tehachapi, and we can hike up there. We can train up there. Or you can train early in the morning. Usually the air quality is not nearly as bad in the early morning. When you drive in your car, put your AC on and put circulate inside air. There's a lot of things you can do. And sometimes I do complain about it a little bit, and a lot better than I used to be, because Debbie and I's made a commitment to stop complaining as much as we do or did do sometimes in the past. So let's talk about stuff that maybe we complain about a little bit too much, and then what can we do to refocus on those areas?
What do you think it is about the complaining, Pastor, that God doesn't like? What is it, you know, I mean, obviously what we say could be a bad thing, but what is it about complaining itself?
I think it's lack of faith in Him and His will for our lives. I mean, for example, if I want to complain about the weather here, it's like it's an insult to God, because God says, I put you there, and I don't want you complaining all the time. I mean, it seems to insult God. And really, when you think about it, worrying and complaining both, they are kind of a slap in God's face. If I put you there, learn to like it.
It's robbing you of hope or any sort of it being better or getting better. Yeah. It's interesting how easy it is to complain, and you don't ever need to be taught how to complain, because you know, my kids, yeah, hey, how was your day at school today? And then it's like, here's all the negative stuff that happened. And that's what we got to coach our kids with is, no. The better question we can ask was, what was your favorite part of your day today? Or what made you laugh the most today? And then try to reframe it. But it is interesting how easy it is for us to instinctively complain.
The first thing you feel when you're born is upset.
Yeah.
Sure.
Right.
Well, because somebody's spanking you. That's why.
Well, you're
Sure.
yanked out of it. They don't spank my kid. You're yanked out of this like calm, quiet, you float. It's like a float. You know what I mean? It's like a floating. Place.
Yeah, I like how you're describing the inside of a woman.
I mean, it's just
really nice,
it's gotta be
floaty
perfect.
place.
It's like a float tube.
He called it a float tube,
Right?
Yeah.
I say spanking you. Do they still do that kind of?
No,
hit
they
them
don't.
on. They
I
don't
think
do
it's
that?
only if they're not breathing, right?
I thought they did that.
I thought they
I'm
did
with
that
that.
too.
I just watched a movie and they pulled the baby out and did that.
They
So.
did that. They kind of slapped him on the
Well, they
rear or
still
something.
Hollywood. Yeah.
Well, that was probably a doctor complaining.
Dad, back in the day when we were born, just curious, were you even in there?
Yeah, I was in there.
Because I didn't think that men did that back then. I thought
Oh,
it was
yeah.
at the
Oh, yeah.
60s. Maybe it was the 60s.
No, I was in there.
Your dad wasn't in there for sure.
No, but I was in there when both of you kids were born.
Okay.
Because I remember
Yes.
your mother was, I was in there. We went through, what was that class called you go through?
Lamaze.
Lamaze. We went through everything.
Oh, wow.
So I'm supposed to
I
coach
have the
her.
best story about that.
I'm supposed to coach her. And then she's going through birth pangs. And I said, I'm sick. I got to get out of here. Is anybody? I was going to faint.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
I was having sympathy pains for
Yeah.
her. And
I felt like that on one, and one was perfect.
so
We went to Lamaze class. This is completely relevant and irrelevant at the same time. Hannah's like, you got to go. I was complaining, like, I don't really want to do this. Like, do we have to? And she's like, it'll be good for us. So they sit us down and the lady's teaching us, okay, she's like, breathe through your nose. So husband, do it with your wife. And so we're breathing through our nose.
like
I'm
I
like,
know where the
oh,
story's going.
I don't want to do this. And she's like, okay, relax your shoulders. And I'm like sitting there and Hannah's into it. So I have to be there. I'm just like, why are we doing this? And so
I know,
the lady's like, relax your knees. And I'm like, how do you relax your knees? And then all of a sudden, I'm not kidding, it's like out of a movie. This lady right next to it just rips the loudest fart of all time. Like, just like lets it out.
Right, yeah.
And I
got all
could
this
not,
pressure
I could not
pushing
hold it
in their
in.
knees.
I could not
Yeah.
hold it in. So I'm trying not to laugh.
Of course,
And at this
yeah.
point, Hannah's laughing. And so I was like, we got to go. Like, we got to go. So we just left and we never went back.
Poor
That was
lady.
it. That was the
That's-
one Lamaze class we went to.
mine was Debbie, breathe. Debbie, breathe. Debbie, breathe. I'm getting sick. I got to go outside. You're on your own, Debbie.
Yeah, no, we left, and yeah, that was the end of that.
Men are so weak. We're so weak, right? We're like the weakest.
Well, what else what do you guys have a temptation to complain about?
New
People?
things,
People?
new experiences.
My
Yeah,
body,
your body.
like not working like it used to.
Yeah,
I've been complaining about that a lot. Pain, like actual pain, like my back pain, my knee pain, stomach pain.
We have a
Emotional
relative.
pain.
We have a relative who works around old people a lot, and she said some of the day. She said, "Those old people are always mad about something. They're always irritated about something." And that's a tendency for older people. We have to be so careful.
There's an app for complaining, and you think it's just Facebook or whatever, but there's actually an app specifically for complaining called Nextdoor. It's
yeah. No, you're right. No, but you know what? You
that's
bring up
all
a good
people
point.
do on there.
Like, I do think we do live in a complaint culture. Like, we talk about Yelp, and Yelp is supposed to be this thing where we leave a positive review.
Right.
But it's not. Like, it is
Never,
literally
yeah.
people that leave reviews, and for the most part, I'm not stereotyping, but people that leave reviews usually are people that are leaving negative
Well,
reviews.
it's because rage equals energy. It's an energy, right? Like you're motivated. If you're upset about something, you're motivated to get them back, and that's what motivates you to write a bad review. Versus like I had a good experience today.
Right.
What do you do with that? You just
Remember it.
Remember it.
You just
chill
remember
with
it.
Yeah,
Right.
you're like, oh, that was good. That was
Right.
great. You might tell a couple friends, but you're not gonna.
Right.
It's not enough energy for you to
you
go.
never hear anybody go in the store and be like, this place was awesome. I'm going to leave a positive review.
Right.
But when people have a
Yeah.
negative experience, you're like, I'm going to write a review
Yeah.
about this place.
Right.
Right.
What is it? Do you think that is a justification, like having those negative reviews? Do you think that's a justification to make our society better?
I think that they're just mad. I think that they get upset.
They just want to vent.
That they were, and they want to get him back. I think it's revenge.
Because you can subtly make a review on a place by whether or not you return.
Yeah.
Right? Because if nobody goes and in little conversations, you're telling your people like, hey, I went there. It's not that great.
It is a warning.
Yeah. Like eventually that business will shut down, right? Eventually, whatever the establishment is.
Well, people that look at the complaint sites.
No, what I'm
Right.
saying is if we didn't have that, you could just, hey, well, let's go eat at this place. No, that place isn't good. Trust me. I went there and I found a hair in my food.
Right.
But these, because I think the reason why these places get started is so that people can kind of be held accountable to make, your experience better, all these different things.
When you're upset about something, like if it's at a restaurant and you were poorly treated or whatever, there's an issue of power, right? You feel powerless. Like, what can I do to this company? I can't do anything to them. I can't, and so it's a power grab in a way. And if you think about complaints in general,
makes you feel powerful.
They kind of are a power grab. It's kind of like a way of saying, well, no, I have power here. I can do something to you,
Would you think that same thing though, if after a long day of working, you come home, let's just say your wife was at home all day and she did
leaves
nothing.
me a review?
And no. She was at home all day. Like maybe she kind of had like a relaxing day and then you have all these things that you're supposed to do at the house because she gave you the list. And then you're sitting there in your head, you're like, but you haven't been doing anything all day.
It would be a power issue. Yeah. I'd be like, come on, man. But that's not how it is in my house.
This must be an age-related thing, because I would never even think about writing a review. It wouldn't even enter my mind. So it must have something to do with the younger
well, we've
culture.
been taught. We've grown up in a way with social media and the internet.
Yeah, that's true. We're not used
Amazon
to
too. Amazon, if you receive a product and it doesn't meet your standard, sometimes they'll either send you another one so that, or they just send it back for.
I'm sorry. I had a visual of your type of review, Dad. When we were younger, we'd go to a fast food restaurant and the person wouldn't have gloves on and they'd be wiping their nose, and you would stare at that person and walk over and just dump the
my
whole
food
thing
in the trash.
right in front of them, and then leave the restaurant. That was way more powerful than a review. That was like the Yelp of 1985.
I've done that several times.
But you're right. I love
and everybody in the restaurant's like, what?
But think if there was that kind of like, I don't know about that to that extreme, but we have empowered a whole culture of people to sit behind a keyboard and leave a review or grumble or complain when we're not happy. Like, you can go on Yelp and say, I had this experience, and you can complain. You've had it happen to you, Pastor, where maybe you said something in a message and people go and complain to you behind the keyboard.
Josh just hit something, because I remember being over the coast and being in line at a fast food place inside. And I was watching the girl. She was thinking in between, I think, baking some bread or whatever. And she had her finger in her mouth and she would touch the bread. And I went up and I said, ma'am, did you know you've had your finger in your mouth and you're touching the bread? Everybody in the line behind me was listening. I said, you can't put your finger in your mouth because you know what you're doing. And so I guess that was my way of making reviews.
The other day, this girl was making my sandwich and she handed it to me and she had a big open cut on her hand.
Oh.
And, but she was wearing gloves. I still ate the sandwich.
You're hungry.
Okay, I'm gonna really freak you out. I'm gonna really freak you out. When I go into a restaurant to get food, I watch everything going on in the kitchen. Very often, Debbie will say, why don't you sit down? I said, no, I'm watching. The other day, it's going to freak you out. Some guy came out of the bathroom with his gloves on, and I don't think he changed them. So the gloves are not protection.
He never took them off?
I didn't see. From my
He's
view,
protecting himself.
from my view, I didn't see him take them off.
That's terrible.
But going back, I want to say something to older people. It is a thing. What was there, a movie some years ago, Grumpy Old Men or something like that was a title. And I think a lot of older people are very grouchy and they complain and they're grumpy because life didn't turn out the way they thought it should have turned out. And I think when they see other people enjoying life, they get very angry. And so as you grow older, you have to really, really watch the temptation of becoming a chronic complainer. Another thing that I had a hard time with, and I started changing, is I would complain a lot about drivers on the road and how they were driving things like people going slow in the fast lane. And that still happens. And so I've had to refocus my life in that area.
Well, that's an interesting example because I wouldn't say I get road rage necessarily, but I do literally find myself asking the question, like, what kind of person has to drive like this? You know, because my mind, and then I try to take it in the direction of, what could possibly? Oh, maybe they're old. Maybe they're an older person, and this is
that's messed up.
I mean, 9 times out of 10, I'm right, but it is also something too.
You're just a number on us old people. That's an old person.
Well,
That's discrimination, Tom.
and so, but I mean, it does start there. You are literally, you can't fathom how somebody isn't operating the way that you're operating. I think that's where it starts.
Yeah.
Sure.
And so,
I have like an archetype in my
don't
head.
don't we come to that place sometimes where we go, anybody going faster than me is a maniac.
Yeah.
Anybody going slower than me is a dumbbell.
yeah.
Have
right.
you ever got behind a car in the fast lane that's going the same speed limit as a diesel truck in the right lane?
Yep.
And for like 10 minutes, you are stuck.
It used to be all Prius drivers. They would drive in the fast lane for some reason and drive really slow. I don't know why.
It goes along with the type of people that buy Priuses now. Here we're doing this again.
I don't know. I drove with my 16-year-old son yesterday. He's driving my truck, and I just felt sorry for everybody that had to be behind him or he was behind because he is just
In the Jeep?
No, he was driving my truck.
Oh, yeah,
And I'm just sitting there trying to be a patient parent and not say too much.
He was driving slow?
Yes, and very slow.
At night in the wind. I mean, it was a lose-lose.
I was just nervous as all get out, but he was like, so he blocked, like he's supposed to turn left or turn right, and you know how there's room to turn right. He just blocks the whole lane so nobody can turn right. And so and all the people I know behind him were like, "What's this guy doing? Why won't he go?" And I'm just like, "Well, he's following the law."
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
Doing the right
if
thing.
we find ourselves complaining about drivers on the road, what can you do? You can listen to Off the Mountain podcast.
Yeah.
There you go.
If I put on a podcast or whatever,
That's
or if
true.
I get some margins in my life where I don't have to be somewhere.
Well, here's another thing. That's a good point because I listen to talk radio sometimes, and it's not positive. It's not their whole these talk radio hosts, like their whole job is revolved around finding something to make people enraged.
Yeah.
And
To get you fired up.
And that's what the whole news cycle is about. So like the
Yeah.
news, what's interesting is these guys complain about the news, yet what they do more than anything is they read those news stories. And then they complain about those news stories, and those news stories are people that are complaining about other people. It's like we just live in a culture of complaining. We really
Yeah.
truly do. And what's funny is if I switch it over to something positive, a more positive podcast or good music or something like that,
Right.
my whole attitude changes.
It does.
And it's, you don't even realize the influence that it has, but you have to be intentional about what you put in. I'll still listen to some of that stuff because I want to know what's going on, but I have to limit it. I have to limit it, and then I have to turn the corner, and I have to choose to do something different that's more positive.
I'm with you.
Have you ever had times that you want your drive to be a little longer because you're really, into whatever you're listening to, and you go, I want to spend a little more time in my car here. I want to hear this.
I'll sit in the parking lot or the driveway at my house, and my wife's like, "What is he doing out there?"
Same.
I'm like,
And then
I've got to listen to this.
Now
rest
my
of this
wife's
spot.
gonna listen to this, and she's gonna be like, "What is with that?"
Yeah.
Because
That's
I'll
what it
literally
is.
sit in my driveway, and I want to
You
hear
want to hear the rest of the conversation. You want to hear it until they move on to the next
Yep.
part.
Would we ever even think in line with the fact that just maybe God would put, or not put, we don't want to say that, but maybe God is looking at us and watching us when we get behind a slow driver just to test us, to see how we react. I mean, I was really bad when I was younger, and everybody knows that. I still can't believe what I would do. If you were in front of me going slow, I would get around you, and then I'd get in front of you and start doing brake checks.
Yeah.
And I mean, that was so dangerous and so stupid, but I'm like 20 years old.
Here's the thing about road rage,
And,
though, and I've been looking into this because I'm really interested in it. I don't know why, but there's drivers there's a lot of drivers nowadays that are driving like little sports cars, and they'll fly and they'll weave in and out of traffic, right?
Yep.
And I get upset about that, and I think that's okay because think about it this way: if somebody walked up to you, Tom, and started swinging a baseball bat 3 inches from your face, would that make you upset?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? What's the difference between driving a car 90 miles an hour and
Right.
weaving in and out of traffic?
Right.
They are literally putting you and your family
Right.
at risk of death or high
Have you
injury.
ever? I know Josh will probably say yes. I have, unfortunately. Again, you listeners need to know that before I was saved and when I was younger, I was a hothead. But have you ever followed somebody and told them about how bad they were driving, going, you could kill people?
Yes.
You need to watch how you're driving. I've done this
Yes,
once or
yes, I
twice.
have.
And you know what? One of the times I did this, I was kind of embarrassed because the person said, oh my gosh, I am so sorry. I was preoccupied, blah. And then I felt about 2 inches
My
tall.
person flipped me off and I saw red. So it was game on. But this guy he was in a nice car and he was flying down a residential road going 60 miles an hour
Yes.
down a residential road. So I found him and I told him, I said, you can't do that, and in different terms. But
I was gonna say, yeah.
That's not non-Christian to do that.
well, it
And
might
that's
have
okay
been.
to do that.
I might
the
have
way you've
crossed.
done it.
I
That's
may
okay
have
to
crossed
do
the
that.
line a little bit
Yeah.
from. I hope he didn't know who I was, but I might have crossed the line a little bit. But it was justified anger, I think. And I think that if you're listening to this and you're somebody who maybe drives a little too fast or you're driving dangerously, be careful. And I need to speak to myself too. Be careful.
For sure.
Because there are families, there are babies, there are little
Yes.
babies in those
Yes.
cars. There are young family. There's people that God cares about those people very much.
The equivalent to fast driving, not to let everybody off the hook, is also people that are preoccupied on their cell phones while
Oh.
they're driving.
That's probably worse. Yeah.
Right. And so I know I was driving home the other day, so I had to give Huntington the driving lesson on the way to church. And then on the way home, I drove and I picked up my phone because somebody texted me and he's like, oh, you're on your phone while you're driving? And I'm like, you're right.
No,
So
you're right. Yeah.
it's like,
Yeah,
it's
he's
easy to let people off the hook.
What is it about complaining though that we justify it? What good do we think comes out of complaining? Because the more I try to think about it, I try to go logical with this.
Yeah.
Like the last time I complained, what did I think the end result was going to be?
Well, I know because from a psychology standpoint, you have to have a release valve. You have
vent.
to have a way to release the energy that you get from anger or from rage. The trick is you have to find healthy ways to do that.
Yes.
Right. And so a lot of people don't have healthy ways to do that. And so one thing, what will happen in a week, okay, is there will be 3 things that happen that really bother you, but it's the 4th thing that causes you to
the straw that broke
to
the camel's
snap
back.
and
yeah.
rage and complain or yell or whatever, however you do things. And so there's a book written, oh my gosh, it's called How Emotions Are Made. I can't remember the author right now, but you can Google that. And in the book, the woman who wrote it talks about how emotions are actually predictions more than they are things that are happening in the moment. So like if I'm driving down the road and I'm cut off, it's because I was already in that mode of like everyone's out to get me. And if they cut me off and I flip out, right? I freak out.
Right.
It's because I've already been like pre-gaming that anger. You know what I mean? So yeah, there you go. How Emotions Are Made, Secret Life and Brain. It is Lisa Feldman Barrett. Very good book. But it's interesting, when you think about emotions and you think about everything, if you were to take that idea and reverse it and start pre-gaming in the right way and think, I'm going to have a good attitude today. Today is the day the Lord has made, right? Like today is a good day. It's a blessing. It's a gift. If something happens to me today, I'm just going to see it. It's not personal. It's whatever that person's going through, they're going through. It's not personal. I'm going to go through today and I'm going to have a good attitude no matter what.
Josh,
it's completely different. And
much of our life needs to be intentional.
Yeah. And the thing is, Dad, there are people in jail, life
Right,
sentences
right.
because they didn't,
That's right.
they were angry and something happened and they snapped and they did something stupid.
But Josh, a statement you made just a few minutes ago, your mother and I were both working on this. I don't like to hear myself complaining. So the very minute we find ourselves complaining, we immediately go to prayer. And we'll start complaining about something and we'll say, right now, and Father God, we come to you. And Lord, help us. And that helps us vent in a positive way.
That's
And
good.
just get it all out in prayer.
Prayer is huge. It's
But
huge.
going back to, something's really helped me through the years to be patient and to work on my attitude is if I have a doctor appointment or a dentist appointment or I have a DMV appointment or whatever, I always go in usually and I find a really good book or I do find a really good podcast on my phone And so when I go to the doctor's office or the dentist's office or DMV or wherever, I don't mind sitting there an hour because I'd probably be reading this book or listening to this podcast anyway. That helps me with my patience.
I'm just really big on this idea of pre-gaming right now. Sorry, Tom. I remember in high school football, I remember playing football, and I remember in the locker room beforehand, all these guys, this was before iPods, so everyone had like a CD Walkman player, but everyone's sitting there listening to their music. They're zoning. They're getting into the zone. They're getting ready mentally to play a football game. And I remember at that moment thinking, you should pregame a lot of things in life, right? You should be prepared for a lot of things in life. And I don't know what that looks like for each person, but we talk about devotions. We talk about sitting down and having prayer time and having study time in the morning. That's pre-gaming for the day. That's what it is. When we do sermons, Dad, what do? We both go into the office, we close the door, we lock the door, and you can't even talk to us.
No, don't disturb me.
An hour, half an hour before we're about to speak, because we're pre-gaming. We're connecting with God. We're praying. We're doing all the things. So anyway, sorry.
No, that's good. And even thinking about it as pre-gaming, especially for anybody who plays sports. But my question was going to be to you, Pastor. You had mentioned how you and Debbie prayed. Can you complain to God? Like, not so much that you're in your own world and, I don't think this is fair or whatever, but going before the Father and just saying, God, we need to talk right now because I'm not happy with what's happening. Is that something that is allowed?
Oh, definitely. I go to God quite often, and I'll say, Father God, right now, I am mad. I'm really mad. I just want to punch somebody out. Lord, I'm just really upset. And so help me right now. Give me a new thought process concerning this situation, or refocus me or whatever.
Have you guys ever asked God or told God, hey, God, what is happening right now just isn't fair?
I think we do vent to God, and I think that's quite appropriate if we do it in such a way that we're saying, God, I'm venting right now. Help me to refocus.
Well, I love that. So you can come to God and you can understand, and this is taught in psychology, but it's originally from the Bible. You can come to God and He can help you understand what is what in front of you can you do something about, right? What is in your control? What isn't in your control, and what's not even real, right? Like I think a lot of complaints are based on things that aren't even real. If you think about that, and then another good portion of complaints are things that are out of your control. Yeah. But if you come to God and say, "Help me refocus," like you said, on what I can actually do right now,
right?
What is in my control,
right?
And it's usually just one or two things. I mean, there's not much that's in our control. There's a lot of things that are out of our control in any given moment. I mean,
see, I don't know if you guys do what Debbie and I do, and we've done it now for years. Again, when we're driving down the road, I'll talk to her, then I'll talk to God, and I'll talk to her for 2 minutes, and I'll talk to God. We don't say, "Shall we pray?" I'll say, Debbie, you know what? That is just wrong. Father God, right now, Lord, forgive us. We're starting to complain. And Lord, right now, refocus us to help us to pray for that person. Okay, Debbie, where were you at now? That's the way we travel.
That is unique, by the way, Dad.
Is that unique?
I don't know that a lot of people do that.
That's what we do.
Yeah. We back in the day used to call that ninja praying, because people they would just be talking to you and all of a sudden they start praying and you're like, oh goodness, I gotta close my eyes and bow my head real quickly. Yeah. But no, that is, I mean, especially the further that you walk with the Lord. I mean, sometimes people, I've been guilty of this, like you think it's got to be this formal prayer, like, oh, yeah. Yes. Let me write this down. I'll pray about this later. But I mean, God goes with us everywhere that we go. He doesn't leave us.
I think, Tom, a lot of our younger Christians out there, they might be shocked if they lived 48 hours with an older couple or somebody more mature in Christ. Again, I've used a statement before, to know normal, sometimes you have to see normal. Mm-hmm. And Debbie and I have slowly worked into a very radical walk with God. And she'll come in probably 2 times a day. Ron, let's pray over this right now. If we hear one of the kids are sick, Ron, we need to pray for him right now. And she'll come in and we'll join together in prayer. We pray a lot, but it's not our life of prayer isn't always centered around a time to pray. Mm-hmm. The Bible says we pray without ceasing. Right. So we're doing it all the time. So we have to be intentional.
Going to your point, Pastor, about a younger couple seeing an older couple in the faith, something my wife and we look forward to is being that old couple that isn't so emotionally attached to certain
circumstances?
Well, just like, you know how like, you know, your wife might say something to you and it kind of, you're just like, oh, that kind of offended me. I've been working really hard. I've been doing this, and she'll say something.
Sensitivity?
Maybe sensitivity is, I guess, a good word. I'm not too sure, but we look forward to the day where, you know, that older couple, they just kind of make those marks to each other like, oh, Frank, you don't know what you're talking about. And they just kind of keep going, you know, whereas when you're young and you're just so emotionally high with something like that, you're just like, oh, I'm crazy, huh? You're the one who, you know, but we just talk about how we look forward to that day.
You know what, Tom, you might get to the age that we arrived at probably a decade ago or a decade and a half. I don't know when it was. We just got tired of fighting and arguing. Just can't do this anymore.
Yeah.
But what we have done, and it's worked well for us, Debbie has done this on many occasions. She says, Ron, you are a really good counselor. Can you pull yourself back right now and pretend like you're counseling another couple with our problem? And you wouldn't believe how many situations, I can use the word argument, maybe that we've resolved that way. Because when I pull myself back out, get my emotions out of it, and I tell Debbie, here's what I would counsel a couple in this same situation. And we go, wow, that is so cool.
I have a
That's
hard
what we need to
I have
do.
a hard time letting things go. So like if somebody makes me mad, like I have to like let them know.
Yeah.
And it's like it's hard and it's this thing, but then I'm learning that just steals so much energy from me.
Yes.
And
Yes.
from people around. Like it's an energy thief.
And what good does it do?
And you think about that verse we talked about earlier today, John 10:10,
Yes.
which is going to be our theme verse in March. The thief comes to steal, kill, and destroy.
Yes.
That's his purpose.
Yes.
And how many times do we just let him? How many times do we just walk
Yeah.
in and say, take it, you know, take what you want from me, you know, and eventually that does lead to a kind of death, right? But Jesus came that we'd have life and have it more abundantly. And I think about how many times we pass up that good life because we're holding on to something that we just need to let go of.
Well, key question.
You know?
Key question. Does complaining do any good? Does it change anything?
It could, but
I was gonna say-
but usually
In what
no.
way?
If it's legitimate, if it's a legitimate thing, like
Yeah.
if it's in the right heart.
I'm
So-
not talking about complaining to someone. I'm talking about complaining when no one's around.
Well, let me ask you
What
this,
good does that
Pastor.
do?
Let me ask this question because you talked about praying as being a healthy vent. But I do think there are times where you might have some key people in your life where you have a healthy vent and not a toxic vent, because I think there's a place where you can get to a toxic place where all you're doing is complaining and it turns into a whole thing. But sometimes I need to tell somebody, like I might have said something to you like, hey, Pastor, this is really bothering me. Or and then you have this healthy vent.
I don't even know if complaint is the word. I'm trying to think of a word for it, but
Right.
yeah, you do need to let people
Sometimes
know.
I have to let
Yeah, I'm
something
not
off my
talking
chest.
about that. That isn't even in my line of subject
Got
right
it.
now.
Okay.
I'm talking about complaining when no one's around.
You're saying by
Complaining.
yourself.
Oh,
by
by
yourself
yourself.
complaining.
Ah.
I'm
Out
not
the-
talking about venting or bringing something to someone to
Got it.
to talk about. I'm talking about complaining.
I think when it becomes a ruminating kind of situation, or becomes something that's just over and over. I think if you feel a complaint, you say I'm bothered by this, and then you are productive about it, and you actually do
Yeah.
something about it. Then
Yeah.
that's okay.
Can people come to a place where they are getting an adrenaline high on complaining?
Oh,
Yeah,
for sure.
absolutely.
And it becomes like a drug addiction.
Yeah.
And so if you don't have something to complain about, you're going to find something to complain
The
about.
people on Yelp, just
Right, yeah.
that have all these stars by their name, or have these like recognitions, like a top reviewer. Usually they're professional complainers. They're good at it. Not always, but sometimes they have good reviews. But at the end of the day, you get rewarded for that behavior in a way on social
Right.
media.
Well, have you seen that guy on TV? I didn't even know who he was till last week. I was in the gym. Who is this guy? Mad Dog. You never seen Mad Dog? I think it's his
Mad
name.
Dog,
Mad Dog.
in the gym.
No, on television.
Oh,
It's a sports podcast. I think
I
it's
thought he said
Mad
in the
Dog.
gym.
And he gets in the camera, right up in the camera where his face is distorted, and he's paid to do that, to complain about everything he can complain about. Is it
Interesting.
Mad Dog? Is that right, Tom?
All I know is Josh was
sports
thinking,
radio?
who in the
Sports
gym have I
TV
met
or
named
radio,
Matt
yeah.
Dog?
Sounds like one of those. Has one of those.
There's him.
Yeah, you haven't seen Mad Dog in
Oh,
the
that
gym?
guy?
DAWG, like the shirt.
Yeah, Mad Dog. Yeah,
the
Mad
bulldog
Dog.
on it?
Sports radio.
Mad Dog Sports Radio. Yeah, and he's
Interesting.
paid to do it.
Got it.
Well, I think, like you said, what complaining can it and yes and no. Like if it's stuff like my complaint. So I have a complaint. Like when I was like, I want to be healthier, and so like for me, there's like some of my complaints turn into motivation. So it's like, so I can take a complaint where I'm like, I need to be. I don't want to eat this way. I don't want to do this, and I kind of get like mad at myself in a way. But then I use that for motivation to change it.
Yeah, for
but
sure.
stuff that I can't change, like you talked about,
You can't do anything about it.
There's nothing I can do about it.
Do you realize, Tom and Vince, do you realize my dad baited us at the beginning?
Whoa.
How
He
so?
got us to complain about Taylor Swift. He got us good.
Yeah.
But
He got us
I
to
think to
complain.
his question, I think it's like his, because I've been there. I can picture myself in the backyard, picking up dog poop or whatever, and you're just like, this dog, how can you possibly go this much? This is unreal. Or you start, like, oh, if we just did this, then we would be like that, and it would be just, and you just start building this up, and you kind of just. Being that, if I'm understanding you correctly, Pastor, like, are you saying something to that effect, like just stewing?
Okay, let me just
yeah.
read some verses. Philippians 2:14. Do all things without grumbling and disputing.
Yeah.
James 5:9. Do not grumble against one another, brothers, so that you may not be judged. Behold, the judge is standing at the door. And then in 1 Corinthians 10:10, nor grumble as some of them did, and they were destroyed by the destroyer.
Yeah.
God absolutely hates grumbling and complaining.
Mm-hmm.
And I really feel that if I get to the place where I'm supposed to be, in the perfect world, I would never complain about anything. Period. Dash.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that you can justify complaining, like, let's just say all of us went on a really, like, separately went on a really expensive vacation, and maybe you were able to afford a really nice this, that, or the other, and then someone asks you, hey, how was your vacation? Do you feel like you've got to dumb it down or pick out a couple of things to complain about so that way it doesn't look like you're bragging?
I feel
It can
zero
be
guilt.
constructive.
Zero guilt. I'm like, it was amazing.
So
Right.
but no, I'm not saying that, but like if you were to start to like, you know what, this resort that we went to, it was all inclusive. We got to ride a boat.
You're right.
Do you feel like instead of doing that, you're like, it was good. It was a little hot.
Sometimes,
it was a
yeah,
little,
I mean, yeah.
because you don't want to come off a certain
Well,
way.
there's these reviews big time on like YouTube, like for young, like when people go to watch reviews about stuff, they want to hear the positive and negative
Pros and cons, right?
pros and cons. And
Right.
so sometimes people will say, hey, this phone's amazing, but they'll give a couple negative things about it just to even it out. And sometimes they're so nitpicky that it's like not even worth mentioning. But they
sometimes
feel like
they're
they-
helpful.
Sure.
Sometimes they really are.
Right.
And that's where.
But are they?
Yeah, I think so. Like if I were to book a hotel for a vacation, and it's my one vacation of the year, and I didn't know, the hotel did not tell me that it was a construction zone that I was booking it in. But someone on TripAdvisor told me that, hey, if you're booking at this time, it's a construction zone. That's not really a complaint. That's just helpful
I
information.
agree.
Yeah, it's
I agree.
information.
And that's different.
I think there's
information.
difference between complaining and just bringing up a negative fact that people can learn from. How was your vacation?
I also think
it wasn't very good, and let me
Right.
tell you why. You're giving them instruction. To
and
me,
I
that's
also
not a
think-
spirit of complaining.
I also
Sure.
think arguing can be really productive. It can also be very unproductive, right?
Right.
And so there's a point where you almost have to learn the art of like giving information that's not positive in a helpful way, right? And there is an art to that. I really do think that. But what you're talking about, Dad, is just somebody that goes around and gets into a spirit.
a spirit of complaining. That
of
is exactly what we're talking
and everything's negative. And
Yeah, a
people don't
spirit.
want to be around people like
No,
that.
you're behind a slow driver in the fast lane. What's wrong with that guy? This is so stupid. Must be a moron. According to Tom Hollenbeck, it must be an old person
Oh man, Tom.
because they got their blinker on. They
Just
just turn their blinker
look
off.
in the
He's
look in the
talking
window
about
next
blue
time.
zone old people. Okay, they're 100 plus. That's the only people he's talking about.
That's messed up, Tom.
Look in the window next time.
I will. I've caught myself a couple times in the pulpit going, old people, I make it, and I say, like over 99, because I look around, there's nobody in there over 99.
Right,
Yeah, right.
I want to qualify that. So,
I mean, they know that we just messed
so
up.
complaining doesn't do any good, and it is a sin. According to the Bible, it is a sin.
Yeah.
And so I say pray immediately. When you find yourself in
good.
the complaining zone, immediately turn it into a prayer. And if you keep confessing that sin before God, it will help you not do it in the future. I'm accountable to Debbie. For years now, we've said, hey, when we see the other complaining, please let's remind one another and go, hey, we're complaining right now. We need to pray.
I'm accountable to my kids. Dad, you said the S word again, which is stupid, by the way, in my family. And so they, you can't say with those words. You can't, because we've taught them. Yeah. And it's funny how you teach your kids morals and they bring them back around to you, like you said with Huntington. You teach them something and they hold you accountable.
Josh, honestly, Ollie come up the other day and said, "You said the S word," and the first thing I thought of was SHI. That's what I thought. I didn't say that. I stupid. It's a word I should use.
I did not say the S word.
Oh, one day I was arguing and your mother came in and said, "You are arguing with a 3-year-old." Do you understand that?
Do you understand that? That's funny.
Yeah. And probably losing because
But she's wrong, Debbie. She's wrong.
Go to timeout. And that's
she's all nope.
But you know what? Really, honestly, when you see some people and what they're going through, you go, "Oh God, forgive me for ever complaining." I mean, there are people out there with going through stuff that we go, "I have no right to complain."
That's why it's so good to go like to Mexico and we do these missions trips, and we haven't done it in a long time. I'd like to get back to that. But
I would too.
We went down there and your whole perspective it's like a weight is taken off our shoulders by hanging out with them because you see that they have joy and they have enough, and it just was really, really humbling, but really, really cool.
Have you ever been embarrassed because maybe you're the older person and you're supposed to know better and you're complaining or something and somebody comes in and goes, "Can we just pray about that right now?" And you go, why didn't I think of that? So
that's so good. Perspective's good though, Josh. I love that we're wrapping up with that.
Yes.
Because sometimes it's like you might go to Starbucks and you're like, this is taking a long time. It's like, who gets Starbucks?
Right.
Like who can even, it's like putting things in perspective is so huge.
There's a guy who was with maybe his wife, maybe his girlfriend. I don't know who she was related to him, but they were out last night asking for money. I didn't have any cash. I tried to get a hold of him again to get him some food, but he was running around. I just left there thinking, I know it's easier for us to judge those people. Maybe they made bad decisions in life, but so have I. But they're out here asking for money. That's not a dignified place. They can't feel full in life. They can't feel satisfied. Like it's just a terrible place to be. And there's people like that all around. And look, you can't fix it all. We can't fix it all. But what we can do is go back to the point where, and this is what I did. I prayed. I got God, what can I do here? What can I do here? And I'm trying to get back to that place where I'm just praying, God, what can I do when people come to me and they're in need? And sometimes you can do something significant. Sometimes you just can't. And that's okay. Just do what you can and get into the mindset of like,
Josh, I've tried
not letting your heart get hard.
I've tried to remind people for years, every time you see a homeless person or somebody with a sign, on the corner there, pray about each one. Don't just automatically get into a mindset that I don't do that.
Which is overwhelming these days because there's the streets are full.
How many times, if any, in the last 3 or 4 years, have you found yourself going back, and I will say probably 4 or 5 times myself, going past someone and then you feel like you're being convicted by the Holy Spirit and you go, I got to go back.
Yeah.
I have to give them something or I have to say something to them or encourage them. And so I just encourage our audience, pray about each case individually. Don't develop a mindset where you categorize everybody into one category.
Yeah,
and so I want to say to our audience that, we really would like to hear from you. What are some subjects you would like to hear us cover? Because every week we come in here and sometimes I don't know what we're supposed to talk about. Sometimes I have something on my heart, but we really could use your help if you would maybe even write us or contact us, say, here's 5 subjects I'd like to hear about. Because we don't want to just talk, just talk about whatever we want to talk about. We really would like to talk about what you would like to hear about.
Yeah.
So please help us out. It would really be appreciated.
That'd be great. Thanks, guys, for listening.
Yeah, we love you
and,
guys.
Be safe on the roads, all right?
Yes. Bye-bye.
You got your daddy's ring. You're like a piece of heaven in a hurricane. And it's bubbling over like a sweet champagne. You got your mama's sunshine. You got your daddy's ring. You got your mama's sunshine. You got your daddy's ring.